Do you hear that? No, you don't. You know why you don't hear that? Because there's no noise. Wow. And you might be wondering what the hell I'm going on about. There's been these builders next door to us for several days now. It's just been really, really noisy. So I'm using this particular time to do a recording on the solar eclipse, which will take place on the 1st of September, 2016 at about 10:03 a.m. That's London time. Although the eclipse is usually a little bit either side, half hour to 45 minutes either side of that time is when the eclipse will be taking place. People always like to know when eclipses, or I should say where the eclipse is going to be visible from. And this particular eclipse will be seen as a, even though it's an annular solar eclipse, it will be seen as a partial solar eclipse in parts of Central Africa, Madagascar, and in a band going straight across from that particular area in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. So today I'm going to give a little bit of a brief lesson on aspects, and the reason I'm going to do that is I want to talk about the aspects that are being created to this particular solar eclipse. And if you'd like to know where the solar eclipse is setting off in your particular chart, please feel free to click the link below in order to schedule an astrological consultation with me. So most of us are familiar who follow Vedic astrology of, planets aspecting, all planets aspecting the 7th across from them, and Jupiter aspecting in addition the 5th and the 9th, and Mars aspecting in addition the 4th and the 8th, and Saturn the 3rd and the 10th, right? But really, planets, for the most part, are always creating aspects to each other. And there are partial aspects that aren't full strength, but they are definitely still aspects. I'm going to touch on those briefly today, just to give you a brief lesson on this. All planets will aspect the 4th and the 8th from themselves with 3/4 strength. Planets will aspect the 5th and 9th from themselves with 1/2 strength. And all planets will aspect the 3rd and the 10th from themselves with 1/4 strength. Now, these are in addition to the regular aspects that planets do create with each other. So the aspects that I'm talking about are judged on a particular strength scoring from 0 to 60, and it's called, they're called rupas, the amount of strength that a planet has. So we're going to talk about some of the aspects that are being created to this particular solar eclipse. But let's first talk about what nakshatra this solar eclipse is going to be taking place in, and see if we can get a general overall tone of this particular energy. The solar eclipse, basically, for those of you who don't know, a solar eclipse is when you have a new moon in close proximity to one of the nodes. And in this particular instance, the new moon will be in close proximity to Rahu. Now, Rahu tends to create a lot of, mass hysteria and difficulties and challenges and illusions. Whereas Ketu tends to create a lot of detachment, right? So it's not necessarily saying that one is going to be better than the other, but there can definitely be a feeling of uncertainty and hysteria with this particular solar eclipse. Now let's talk about Purva Phalguni a little bit. Purva Phalguni, I like to talk about the two Phalguni nakshatras, Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni, as being related to something that I like to call the sacred contract. Mainly, it's about agreeing with yourself, right? Or working more in harmony with yourself, being your own best friend, not getting in your own way, which is another big thing. And sometimes these particular nakshatras will also manifest in the manner that we interact with other people, right? So basically, the energy that that Purva Phalguni nakshatra gives, because all the nakshatras have a particular shakti associated with them, or energy, is the power of creative procreation, right? So what does that mean? Let's look at that. Well, that's the power of being able to creatively come up with a path ahead in order to create something new. In order to do that, we need two components, a masculine component or an active component, and a feminine component or a receptive component. And when we combine those two components, what we get is the birth of something new. But many times, and especially with this particular eclipse, sometimes there's some difficulty or some uncertainty that comes into the equation in the joining together of these two factors, right? Now, Venus is favored in the sky at the particular time of this eclipse, and Venus rules Purva Phalguni Nakshatra. So that's actually very helpful energy in terms of finding a constructive path ahead. It's just, for lack of a better way to put it, we've got to get over the hump. Now, as this is going on, we have aspects from Mars and Saturn who will have about a week or so before formed an exact conjunction with each other in Jyeshta Nakshatra. I'll go more into that here in a moment, but I also have done another video on that. Mars will, in addition, be forming an aspect to Ketu, and Saturn will be forming a stronger aspect to the Sun, Moon, and Rahu. Now, what this is going to mean, just kind of to summarize, is some very uneasy energy. One part of that energy sees the potential of a particular situation and wants to take advantage of that potential and really wants to act on things. But sometimes the interaction between Mars and Ketu has a tendency to, for lack of a better way to put it, break things, right? So you have to be a little bit cautious on proceeding with that particular energy. And Ketu presently is in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. So that can make this energy get a little bit amped up. Mars and Jyeshta will give insight. It'll see a potential. Purva Bhadrapada may blow that sense of potential out of proportion, right? And then when one acts on it and some chaos might ensue, then that has the tendency to elevate. So that's something to be cautious about, and that's something to watch out for. Saturn, as annoying as it is, may be actually providing some decent structure to this particular configuration. Now, Saturn is going to be slow. It's going to really want to take, even though it's in a position where it's eyeing the path ahead right now and it sees a potential path ahead, it's going to want to be conservative. It's going to want to take its particular time with the set of circumstances which are unfolding. What will those set of circumstances be? Well, that depends on where this is affecting your chart. And again, you'll see it at the end of this video, and there's a link down below, if I don't flash it up at this particular point, that can take you to my astrological services page if you'd like a little more information on that. It's good sometimes to look at the Panchanga on the day of the eclipse. Basically, as we said, it'll be in Purva Phalguni Nakshatra. In addition to that, the Karana on that day is going to be one of the fixed Karanas. The Karana relates to the actual doing of the process. And the Karana on that day is Naga. The fixed Karanas are associated with the sun and the moon, so it depends a lot on the well-being of the sun and the moon, and there's a lot of harsh aspects that are being received by the sun and the moon, in addition to their connection with Rahu. So it can make for the potential to feel like you need to do something rash in order to create a change in a particular set of circumstances. Nagas are snakes, so you may want to strike out or do something. But if you do so, you're going to find that the result was not worth the effort or whatever might have happened as a result of it, as per Mars and Ketu, like we were talking a second ago. The Solar Lunar Yoga, which gives an idea of how everything can be held together. It's like the glue that will hold all the events that are related to the circumstances together. That is actually Sadhya. Sadhya means to be mastered. And this has a connection with Bharani Nakshatra. So with this particular energy, it's about restraint. It's about discipline. Okay? It's about recognizing that if you take your time with something, no matter how challenging that might be to do so, it will actually create something that is much more productive for you. So we don't want to rush with this particular energy. It can feel like you're having to sit with something. that you don't really want to sit with, right? And you may feel unhappy about that and feel like things are just really not going anywhere when you really need for them to go somewhere, right? And Mars and Saturn are not helping that, because Mars is very passionate. It wants action. It wants to take that forward motion. Saturn is going to be very reserved. It's going to be very conservative. So those two planets, they're kind of like, oil and water. Sometimes they don't mix very well, right? It's like having your foot on the gas pedal and the brake pedal at the same time. As I was saying, because of the position of Mars, right, it's going to see the potential, right? How something might be able to be nourished. But Saturn is going to have a protective element to it, right? It's wanting to take care of a problem or to even take care of a person, right? And so it's being very cautious in terms of the steps that it needs to take. And it's needing to be a little bit heroic in terms of how it is going about the circumstances and going, no, I may feel compelled to act, but on the balance, I think I'm just going to kind of take things slowly. Now that, on a certain level, is good, because Saturn is forming an aspect to the Sun and the Moon and to Rahu at the time of this particular eclipse. So Purva Phalguni Nakshatra can also be understood as allowing the resources and the wisdom and the knowledge that one needs to come together so that one can feel confident for the next stage of the journey. Because Purva Phalguni is also symbolized by a cot and also by a platform, right? The platform used to be where the teacher would teach in order to teach the students. So it's an idea of a place of rest where one can pull together information for the next stage of the journey. Due to the position of the Sun and the Moon, there may be the desire that's building inside of you to take action. But listen to Saturn's wisdom. As annoying as Saturn may be, as difficult as it may be to deal with that obstruction, sometimes Saturn can be your friend. He can provide the discipline that you need. He can provide the patience that you need. And we mustn't forget that the name of Saturn in Vedic astrology is Shani. And from Shani comes the word Shanti. So it's about peace. Saturn can provide the peace that you need. But we don't like to go into that silence that Saturn may want to represent for us, because we live in a busy world. We're always wanting action. A set of circumstances arises, difficulty comes to the surface, we want to take action and deal with it. But sometimes taking action in the immediate sense is not always the best thing. And as things build up to the lunar eclipse, that will take place on the 15th of September, which we're not going to cover in this video. You'll have to wait a little while for that one. In terms of the lunar eclipse, you can see how things, having had a chance to build, will have been a very good thing. So in between the 1st and the 15th, really focus on where this is affecting your chart. You can make some really positive transformation during eclipse periods if you bring your attention to that. And again, if you would like to schedule something with me so that we can talk about what it might be affecting in your chart, the link to my astrological services page is below. That's going to do it for a look at the solar eclipse for the 1st of September 2016. Until next time, my friends, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.